Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty RoundTable Radio Talk Show.
Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman, hard-hitting news the networks refuse to use, starts now. Promoting God, family, and country, protecting life, liberty, and property in the traditions of our founding fathers. Dr. Scott Bradley with me, freedomsrisingsun.com. Our goal to break down the weekly Q&As on the Constitution every Thursday evening, 7 p.m. Mountain Time by the good doctor. To learn more, to get your sign-up ticket to participate, freedomsrisingsun.com. We're going to chat about the ongoing Venezuela saga, the seizure of the Russian oil tanker, the shooting in Minnesota, the LDS church shooting in Salt Lake City, Netanyahu and Trump agree to greater military action against Iran, and why the heck is the United States so dedicated to Israel? The shift of conservatives in favor of what they call Affordable Act, really Obamacare. I guess it's really Romney care. We've mentioned that from the very beginning, and no wonder the Republicans play there against it when they want brownie points, but prove they're for it when push comes to shove. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Dr. Bradley, welcome, sir.
Well, good morning to all. And, we've got a whole fresh new week here, guys. The air's not even been breathed over. We ought to make the most of this week. So, let's kind of keep our antennas up and do the right thing, because to tell you the truth, there's plenty out there choosing the wrong.
Amen to that. We're banging on all the cylinders, ladies and gentlemen, with a simple agenda. That is to promote God, family, and country in the traditions of our founding fathers, to keep the legacy of the supreme law of the land alive and well, repeat with its checks and balances. We don't seek for power. We seek to pull it down as we await our Savior to return. Welcome to the show. The ongoing Venezuela saga, Doctor. I don't even know how to tell you. The debate's on, and conservatives are divided. Some conservatives are saying, hey, you got to follow the Constitution. Ron Paul, Judge Andrew Napolitano, Sam Bushman, Scott Bradley among them, that, hey, he can't do that. It's unconstitutional. Others would say, well, the ends kind of justifies the means. He's got to do it with a derelict Congress that won't act. He has no choice. The problem is I see both sides, but I still stand with the Constitution. The conservatives are divided. The liberals are apoplectic about this thing. Doctor, break it down for us, will you?
This is a very complex, a huge subject, and I've said so many times on your show, it sounds like I'm a crank, that almost every second-term president really steps in it when they get into their second term in international affairs. This is exactly what's going on. Of course, it's not just Venezuela, it's all over the world. But the fact of the matter is, if we were going to really do this justice, we'd want to take a whole show and then we'd have a lot left over. But think about it for a minute. We have, sadly, I've looked at this from a lot of different angles. We have abandoned the constitutional republic. We are now in an empire kind of environment. And people say, oh, well, the United States has always been an empire. If that's the case, it's a very sad scenario. And ultimately, finally, you look at what happens to every empire. I don't care if it's, Nebuchadnezzar's, or it's Alexander the Great's, or if it's Caesar's, or if it's Tojo's, or if it's Adolf's. Every empire, the Roman Empire, whatever, ultimately and finally is dragged to its death by someone that tries to seek or seize the ultimate power. What you have, basically, and this is just a snapshot. These Q&As we do is just a snapshot of last Thursday night. It doesn't mean that anything goes away after that or anything's been fully addressed, but we would be a voice of warning that as Caesar addresses more and more accrual of power, we get farther and farther away from the Republic. And Madison warned us extremely about this, both in the convention in 1787 and towards the end of his life, as he was, having some of his writings compiled, later writings. So this thing with Venezuela, we have got Trump speaking like he is the emperor. Hey, I think it'd be so cool if Rubio was the president of Cuba. Again, I'm saying it's way beyond the Venezuela thing. He literally has made comments like that. And just like you can hand out some, fiefdom to some loyalist that's, stood by you and has a lot of personal loyalty to, well, I'm going to reward you with a smaller kingdom. Kids, just think about this. We're told by Trump, we are going to run Venezuela. And then, of course, we could talk about the Greenland thing and everything, too, about how the accrual of empire seems to be very much on his mind. But if you stop and think about I don't know, Puerto Rico has been a mess from the day that it came under the United States control. I mean, so was the Philippines, so was Cuba for the period of time it was. These kinds of things ultimately and finally come back and bite you. Puerto Rico right now, if it were to join the Union, would be a huge problem. Think about if they tried to pull in Venezuela. And he says, we're going to be managing it.
And one of the problems, what they do is they point to the Monroe Doctrine, and they act like that gives them authority to literally control, under any circumstances, our hemisphere. But if you read the Monroe Doctrine in detail, it really related to Great Britain and to European countries. It didn't relate to the whole world, number one. If you go read the actual language, they would claim, what it means is we can't have foreign affairs in our hemisphere. What it really meant clearly was that, hey, we're not going to worry about countries in their own hemisphere. We'll stay in our hemisphere. And what we'll do is protect the United States from enemies, foreign and domestic. I mean, that's really all the Monroe Doctrine said. But they want to expand it to basically mean anything they want it to. Nation building and beyond, right?
Well, we could point to quote after quotation of Trump out there saying, we're done with these eternal wars. We're done with these nation building expeditions and so on. That's all he's done. I listened to a conference he did last night on the airplane. He said he's done, he said 9.25 or 9.5, nine something wars that he stopped. Bravo Sierra. Do we count the ones he started or continued? And he's bombed 7 nations since being in office. And they say, they all deserve it. Well, did any of them, was it followed constitutionally? Not a one of them was. So this thing with Venezuela is just an expanding thing, and he's having confrontations on the high seas, seizure in the high seas, and there's, when a ship is flagged, well, let's just do this Russian ship that got picked up.
So now you're talking about the oil tanker.
Oh yeah, we could talk about that.
Many claim that it was a Venezuela tanker, but then it flew under a Russian flag because of their partnership. The reality of which I'm not sure we even know, right?
Well, that's the thing, and these, the way you change how a vessel is flagged and everything, there's just an awful lot of protocol to that. And here's what the administration's saying. Well, this ship changed flags mid-journey. Okay, so it's out in the deep water, and it changed to a Russian flagged ship. And so they're saying, no, we can't. Well, no, heavens no. If it doesn't happen, while they're in a port and they change it, they get all their paperwork done, we are straining at gnats and swallowing camels. It's kind of like the buckaroos are out there running things on the high seas. And, somebody's looking to get a shooting match someday. So far, Russia was escorting this vessel, and they chose not to, intervene when the United States interdicted and seized the vessel. I don't know if that's going to be the case all the time, or how long it takes. I mean, United States. And
I'm not defending Russia, but in Russia's defense, they held restraint, right?
Russia was the adult in the room. That's kind of the bottom line. I think Iran's the adult in the room. I hate to say that. I mean, I know we're supposed to get to some of these topics we talked on Thursday. There's so many interplays on all of these things. It's almost like you got to lay the cards on the table and pick up each one as you go. But here we have Iran. They got a lot of turmoil in their country. They've got pushback. Trump has said, hey, you shoot any of these people, we'll shoot you. Wait a minute. We got turmoil in our country. Look what's happened in Minneapolis. And we've had American citizens die. And Trump is doing this big blustering buffoon kind of thing on the sidelines. I mean, trust me, I'm not in the camp in favor of the mullahs, but I'm saying it's where presidents screw up in their second administration. I mean, and when Netanyahu, again, this is another subject. Netanyahu comes and sees Trump, and here we got this thing saying, well, we may have to have another military intervention, whether it's to make sure they still stay in the dark ages or development in other weapon systems. Or, by the way, if the protests that are going on in their country are being somehow, opposed by the regime. And all of these things is none of our business. It's nothing.
Amen to that. The problem is we're using the Monroe Doctrine to claim we're on stable ground. We're using case precedent where Congress has been derelict in their duty, turning more and more authority over to the president. Congress becomes inert or feckless, whereas the president seems to seize more and more power. Whether it's the ongoing Venezuela saga, whether it's the Russian oil tanker, we're stepping in it all over the world and violating the supreme law in the process.
Why don't we say to the government writ large that they have to spend a little bit less? Anybody ever had less money this year than you had last? Anybody ever having a 1% pay cut? You deal with it. That's what government needs, a 1% pay cut. If you take a 1% pay cut across the board, you have more than enough money to actually pay for the disaster relief. But nobody's going to do that because they're fiscally irresponsible. Who are they? Republicans. Who are they? Democrats. Who are they? Virtually the whole body is careless and reckless with your money. So the money will not be offset by cuts anywhere. The money will be added to the debt, and there will be a day of reckoning. What's the day of reckoning? The day of reckoning may well be the collapse of the stock market. The day of reckoning may be the collapse of the dollar. When it comes, I can't tell you exactly, but I can tell you it has happened repeatedly in history when countries ruin their currency.
Get ready to be part of something incredible. We're breaking barriers and delivering the powerful stories that mainstream media won't touch. Your support is what fuels our mission to revolutionize journalism and bring you the truth. Join our passionate community of changemakers by donating at libertynewsradio.com today. Together, we're creating the future of news.
Do you know what is great about America? Ask an Immigrant. Ask an Immigrant is a new podcast dedicated to helping Americans, especially our youth, value, appreciate, and be grateful for the freedoms we have here in America. Join host Lydia Wallace-Nuttall as she interviews immigrants from around the world to discover their inspiring personal stories about why they came to America. To learn more about why America is the most prosperous, greatest country in the world, download the Loving Liberty app or go to lovingliberty.net.
Uh-oh, I think we lost Dr. Bradley. Sam Bushman on your radio, hoping you're all doing absolutely fantastic, ladies and gentlemen. We got a big problem in Minnesota. You think we got problems all around the world? Minnesota's even bigger. ICE shooting in Minnesota. Let's break that down. Are you with me, Dr. Bradley?
I am here, I think, still.
Welcome. Yes, you are.
Okay.
Minnesota shooting. This is disaster on a bunch of fronts. ICE always getting, in my opinion, the manipulated stories, right?
Well, Sam, you almost have to back up to the beginning of the 20th century. Well, clean back even to, let's remember the Maine back in the Spanish-American War. Let's just take something, I'm sure you have some personal understanding on. Clive and Bundy and Ammon and Ryan, those guys, I'm sure, from Bunkerville.
Sure.
And so we got this confrontational kind of scheme going on. What was her name? Navarro. Gloria Navarro was the judge. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that particular instance, but once they got into the trial situation down there, they said that the storyline was not as has been presented through all the news media and everything all along. It was an egregious violation at so many different levels that the judge basically threw it out with prejudice. There's no way in the world they can bring the charges again. And the violations were lying through their teeth if their lips were moving or if their teeth were or whatever. And stuff like this.
And the real reason that blew up in the face of the judge was because there were some whistleblowers that stood up for Ammon Bundy and told the truth. And I really believe that case was cut short. Ammon was set free. I agree because of the egregious nature of the government, but also what they really didn't want to have happen is they didn't want Ammon Bundy and company to get so much stuff out in the open on the record.
Absolutely.
Because it would have shown we knew the government was derelict and abusive and everything else, but it would have proved names and people and associations and who recommended or who demanded what. And the judge didn't want that coming out. And so on one hand, it was a great, day for Ammon because we realized how corrupt the government was, but they also stopped the real details that we needed on that case. And I think that's the case a lot of times when they know they're in trouble, they just let it go and it stops. What should happen is there should be prosecutions. If the judge says the government was abusive and wrong and did all these things, who went to prison over it then? Answer, nobody. So what they do is when they think they can nail you to a wall or nail you to a lie, so to speak, then they do it. When something comes out to where they're going to lose or going to, credibility crisis is going to happen, then they jettison it and just go, oh, no harm, no foul. Thanks, bye, which is what they did for Ammon Bundy. I'm grateful that he's free, but we lost the real story, right?
Well, absolutely. It was a shoot, shovel, and shut up kind of thing. I talked to a Wyoming rancher at one point about their wolf problem, when wolves were fully protected. And he said, we have a solution to that, shoot, shovel, and shut up. So it was a cover-up job. What happened with the Bundys? Okay, fine. Okay, we could go to, I don't care what big issue, hinge point issue you look at. That is basically what we're dealing with is disingenuous reporting by the establishment. And I started following this shooting as it was real time unfolding. Okay. And I could see with my own eyes, all the different camera angles and everything else like that they had. This was an absolute fabrication of a terrorist act, of a weapon being used by an individual in a vehicle. The guy that was pulling the trigger was standing to the side of the vehicle the whole time. He dragged his butt over to the death scene. The woman was dead while the vehicle was moving. You don't put 3 headshots in or whatever he ended up doing and not get results. So this thing was extremely ill reported. And when you get the most senior levels of the government, oh, this brave officer was run over and he's in the hospital recovering and oh, ain't it awful? We're all going to die. That individual there was no danger at any time for that individual based upon the placement of his feet. I mean, you can clearly see in all of these things, the placement of the vehicle, the angle of the wheels. This whole thing has been reported. Now, what's his name? Tom Holman. He's the czar of the border or something like that still is what they're terming him. I heard him give a report last night. I mean, I was blown away. Holman never backs down from anything. He's kind of like the straightforward boxer that's is blocking the shots with his face, but he's keeping to continue in the fight. He never dials anything back. Well, last night he did. He said, oh, well, this is an ongoing investigation. You got to give us time. There's probably things we don't know about it. I mean, he was waffling on so many different angles. And I knew that from the absolute real-time start of it, that their story was a falsehood. And I kind of think, and a lot of people in your audience may, if they're older, may remember what was going on in April, May, June, and July of 1970. And that when the South Vietnamese went into Cambodia at the end of April, and the United States was May and June, and they kind of mopped things up and got out in July. But the United States was in there for a couple of months. But there was I was on active duty at the time, and this was real-time stuff we've got smoke coming out of our ears on this thing. So there was a lot of protests around America. And of course, when I was active duty, I wasn't at a shooting scene at Kent State, but they had a bunch of students that were protesting. And the National Guard responded, and they killed some students and they wounded some. And in my opinion, that was kind of a hinge point on Vietnam. Nixon, I think, realized, we've lost the people. And so they started to extract themselves. I kind of think this incident could very well turn into something like that. I think
Let me kind of break it down just so people understand. So, are there illegals and protesters doing things that they ought not do? Without question, no doubt about it. Are there illegals in the country and do they need to be removed? Absolutely, no doubt about it. However, when you take instances where mistakes are made intentionally or otherwise, and then you don't admit to those mistakes, you might win that battle, but you lose the war, so to speak. In other words, you can't have the people back the government when they can see with their own eyes or, something wrong. So now the protesters are protesting the fact that this, person got shot. So now it's not even whether you're for or against ICE. It's now a question of, if we say anything, we're supposedly against ICE and Tom Holman. Well, no, we're not against or for anybody. We stand on truth. We're truth tellers. We stand on principle. And when truths are obliterated by lies, I don't care which side says them, it's wrong. And when we have a situation where, hey, we used to hold the moral high ground, and because we're going to cling to the fact that we're always right or we're always the good guys, even when it's not true, we lose the moral high ground. Isn't that what this is about, Doctor?
Well, there are so many things that are playing. Exactly what you're talking about is the issue. And I think that the optics on this thing and everybody that will take the time to carefully analyze, when it first started up and we started getting feeds of different videos, everybody has a camera and everything like that. I probably, let's just say there were 30 different angles. I probably watched each of those 30 angles 30 times. And it was, there is nothing that would indicate that the original story by the administration about this brave officer that's on death's door and has been run over by a terrorist and all this kind of stuff, everything just unraveled, and it continues to do so. It's kind of like the Charlie Kirk 30-06 story. And it's just kind of gone quiet, and they're doing their thing. But the fact of the matter is, every time somebody jumps on something and puts these stakes in the ground without having all the facts, seek the facts before you speak whatever you're doing. And I tell you, oftentimes, my personal adage is not trust but verify, which is what Reagan's was. Mine's distrust until verified. And I put an inordinate amount of time reviewing this. I cannot possibly imagine, unless it's a total fabrication being completely woven out of whole cloth, what the administration's position on. And again, Holman started to walk that back a little bit, in my opinion, last night when I watched one of his interviews. And he never, like I say, he's the bull in the closet, the head down, straightforward boxer that continues to push the fight. And last night, he stepped back into the ropes. And so I think that this may change some of the momentum. And there's got to be an approach. By the way, did you see Jesse Ventura go back to his old high school and stand on the steps out in front and cheer them on? He's a Minnesota guy. Yeah. He says, I only served 1 term as governor. He says, maybe I need to come back.
Well, and the problem for the Trump administration is when we start to ignore the Constitution, ignore Congress, and start to nation build and everything else all around the world, invade sovereign countries, capture leaders, run foreign nations, this kind of stuff. And then we start to see domestically here where something happens, and instead of saying, oh my gosh, we made the wrong decision on this, and being truthful, when people start to see more and more and more issues where they're going, I don't agree. Wait a minute, that's not what happened. Hold on a minute, they're not telling the truth. Credibility starts to erode quickly, and sadly, that's where Trump is starting to end up. Where it's like, okay, he does a lot of good, agreed. But now there's a lot of bad that they're not admitting to, okay? And when that starts to happen, people start to leave. People start to say, no, I don't want to do that. Anyway, we've got more. We're going to talk about the shooting in Salt Lake City as well. That's got some interesting overtones. We'll talk about that. We also want to talk about Netanyahu and Trump, and this is kind of what I mean. Double down in Israel, even when Israel is committing war crimes. I mean, that's the problem, right? All right, we'll talk about it more in seconds. Dr. Scott Bradley, freedomsrisingsun.com.
protecting your liberties. You're listening to Liberty News Radio.
Breaking news this hour from Town Hall. I'm Rich Thomason. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell claims the central bank's independence is at risk, and he blames President Trump. Powell says the Fed has been served with subpoenas and is threatened with a criminal indictment related to his congressional testimony last June. Powell's already on his way out as a Fed chair with just 4 months left in his tenure. The death toll in Iran has soared to more than 540 amid nationwide anti-government demonstrations threatening the theocracy with collapse. The BBC's Lise Doucette.
Videos have emerged of a makeshift open-air morgue just outside Tehran, where people came searching for their loved ones. The BBC was able to count at least 180 white shrouds as refrigerated trucks kept pulling up with more. The government has also been burying its own. The coffins of security forces and civilians were carried by crowds in what state television says were at least 10 provinces.
President Trump, who has threatened U.S. intervention to halt the bloodshed, says Iran is seeking negotiations. As for what the protesters are seeking,
I think they just want peace. They want to have freedom. The protesters are after freedom. Iran has not allowed freedom for a long time. And the protesters, I don't think they're trying to appease me. They're trying to get somebody to help them. They're under siege.
Several people injured in Los Angeles. Someone drove a U-Haul truck into a crowd of Iran protesters. The driver is under arrest. Homeland Security Secretary Noem says hundreds more federal agents will be deployed to Minneapolis and vicinity in the midst of the ongoing anti-ICE demonstrations. Watching Wall Street this morning, stocks in the red. The Dow is down about 165 points. The Nasdaq off 3 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher. Now that we're finally into the new year, a lot of us are thinking about taxes, home projects we've been putting off, ways to get ahead financially in 2026. Now's the perfect time to talk to my friends at Fellowship Home Loans. If you want to lower your mortgage payment, they can help you refinance. If you need access to cash for home improvements or to wipe out high-interest debt, their fixed-rate line of credit is one of the best tools out there. Fast approval, predictable rate, and flexibility to use your home's equity wisely. Remember, many people still qualify to skip their next 2 mortgage payments. Imagine starting big projects or paying down debt with 2 months of breathing room. My family and I have Fellowship personally. I trust these guys. Take control of 2026. Go to fellowshiphomeloans.com/Mike G. fellowshiphomeloans.com/Mike G. fellowshiphomeloans.com/Mike G. Or call 800-510-MIKE. That's 800-510-6453. Fellowship Home Loans. Mortgage lending by the book.
Nationwide Mortgage Bankers. DBA Fellowship Home Loans. Equal housing lender. NMLS number 819382.
In the medical field, IT security is crucial. Our highly skilled consultants are HIPAA certified and have 20-plus years of experience servicing medical clinics, billing, and supply companies. We offer comprehensive endpoint protection, guarding your computers and servers against all stages of threats. And with our 24/7 monitoring services, you'll never worry about extensive downtime again. Ready to level up your IT support? Call 801-706-6980 today and discover how great IT services can be with managed IT services.
Experience the untamed spirit of the American West with Range Magazine. Each issue is a visual journey featuring award-winning photography and compelling stories that capture the heart of ranching and rural life. Stay informed on the challenges and triumphs of those who live and work on the land. Subscribe today and receive quarterly editions delivered to your doorstep, and join a community that cherishes the enduring legacy of the Western frontier. Visit rangemagazine.com to subscribe.
Attention collectors and savvy investors. We are excited to announce a momentous evolution in our journey. Introducing Free Water Coin Company, formerly known as Rust Coin and Gift. This rebranding takes us back to the very roots of where it all began, Free Water, Oregon. It's a tribute to the legacy of Al Rust and a celebration of 3 generations of dedication to excellence in the world of coins and precious gifts. Al, Brian, and Jake Rust standing strong through 64 years of service. Discover a world of exceptional service at Free Water Coin Company, your premier destination for genuine, honest money and precious gifts. Under Brian's expert guidance, Freewater Coin Company, building on the legacy of Rust Coin and Gift, continues its tradition of trust and excellence. Visit us at our Provo, Utah location. Explore our treasures online at freewatercoinco.com or call us at 801-377-1574. Freewater Coin Company, where your future is built one honest coin at a time.
All right, a shooting took place in Salt Lake City. Yeah, it took place in the parking lot. I guess there was a funeral going on inside at the time. A shooting occurred. 2 people died, several people injured. I guess they haven't caught anybody yet. Doctor?
Well, there's a lot of strings to pull on this thing, too. It looks to me like a gang-related, at least a group that I'm not sure that the funeral was for an absolute gangster or anything like that, but it looked like a kind of a little different kind of funeral setting that you'd normally see. But the thing I think that's caught a lot of people's attention, and now this is the second one that's happened at an LDS church in the last few months. There was one back in Wisconsin too, as you might recall.
Yes, sir.
And the LDS church some years ago made a policy, official policy, and I'm afraid that people are starting to discover that it's a soft target when you're at one of those buildings. The policy is this: it's a total zero. There's no firearms and no weapons at all that are allowed. And you say, well, the church is supposed to be a place of peace, a place of refuge and contemplation.
And it is, but that doesn't change your point.
Until it's not. And when it's not, that suddenly being in a gunfight is the highest stress, shortest fuse kind of, high pressure kind of thing. Blood pressure, respiratory rates, panic, fear, doubt, all that kind of stuff happens in a very compressed setting. And if in fact, the official LDS church policy in regards to arms in the church is, if somebody comes in and starts shooting the place up, throw something at them and go hide. I mean, I'm kind of capturing that very, very succinctly with not a lot. Go refine the policy. It's available. It's online. And basically it's throw something at them and go hide. Well, sometimes the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
I wouldn't say sometimes, almost every time that's the case.
Almost every time. And I'm very concerned that this official policy that's so contrary to what, this entire continent was founded under. Back in the colonial era, some of the colonies had laws on the books that said you've got to bring a gun to church. Others said you do a target practice after church. Some of them said you've got to have a functioning firearm in the home. To be dead? And it's simply, that's the basis of being able to take care of yourself. And people say, oh, well, that was in the days of the Wild West and the woolly, kind of rough and tumble kind of world of colonies. Apparently it's doing that nowadays too. It's a rough and tumble world. There's a lot of bad people out there. And if you have a soft target, and they've started to figure that out, it could be, this could be trouble. So, and it has proved to be. And there were I think a couple of killed and 6 injured or something like that.
Yeah, 2 killed, 6 injured. And the names are very strange. I don't really know what all this means. I agree with you. It's probably some kind of gang activity. They say it was an internal tiff. What's interesting to me is they say this: witnesses at the church weren't cooperative. That's what's very interesting to me.
Well, that's just one interesting spin, Sam. I think they were not cooperative because they're closed mouths. They're gonna basically tit for tat, I think, try and resolve the issue in a little evening scheme.
I pray the answer is no, but predict you're right.
Yeah. So that's the problem, is that, whether there was a few gangsters that came in and opened fire on a rival gang or whatever. I don't personally know that. But the fact of the matter is that had this been a setting where your wife, your children, your fellow congregants, where somebody can intervene, they should. And this idea of throwing something and hiding is just completely contrary to the whole Americanist kind of philosophy. And again, yeah, I understand. I understand the deal about churches are supposed to be places of refuge and, safety and all this kind of stuff. Until they're not, though. When they're not.
And that's the problem, whether it be government, schools, churches, anywhere in America, when you have, quote, gun-free zones. And I agree that the church can make their own policies. It's their own private property, and they have the right to decide what happens on their private property. But at the end of the day, to me, President Trump said he was going to get rid of gun-free zones first day. He promised that. Literally never happened. And that's kind of the problem that we're facing. But you know what? We're having internal issues domestically, just like we are external issues internationally. The point being, Netanyahu and Donald Trump agree to, quote, further military action against Iran. So you've almost got a microcosm in Salt Lake City here where, hey, you got a couple of people that are going to shoot somebody else. They're going to take control. They're going to, the innocents are in every case, internationally or domestic. But it almost seems like you just have people ganging up on people everywhere. Doctor?
Well, indeed you do, but there's some other parallels that need to probably be thought about. Somebody ought to talk about it, and I guess we are, is that, let's say, Maduro was taken for Trump's, all of the excuses that they fabricated to put together for it, which is so blatantly different than international law, constitutional authority, congressional, national code, all that kind of stuff. But one of the excuses, Maduro had an indictment against him. Well, so does Netanyahu. I mean, there are nations.
And if Trump's not careful, he will pretty soon too.
Well, that's the thing is if somebody had tried to rappel onto the back patio of Netanyahu's summer home and grab him and his wife and take him away because of somebody had an indictment against him, it's not going to go. I mean, the World War III would have already been declared. Something else happens with another leader. And these kinds of excuses, people don't seem to understand, literally and truthfully, can be spun in a way that gives justification for some other nation to take an equally egregious step and do that. I mean, think about this. I mean, we talked just momentarily about this earlier in the hour about, these protests that are going on in Iran and Trump saying they got to step back, Jack. We're going to open fire on them with power they don't even can't imagine. Well, think about this for a moment. We got stuff like that going on in our country where American troops, and they are troops. I mean, if you're wearing the body armor and you look like you're one of the, G.I. Joes that are out there. It changes the mentality. There's nobody that's trying to diffuse situations. The United States has not been trying to, dial it back, defuse situations. And that's another part of the problem. Nobody took steps in this Minnesota shooting to dial back the level of escalation. They kept escalating. And you know what Trump said in his interview last night, by the way, and I know I'm jumping all over the place, but all of these things are interrelated. He said, at the very least, these protesters were disrespectful of ICE. So do we shoot people in the face because they're disrespectful? I mean, give me a break, people. When was this protect and serve concept that we saw on Adam 12, the movie back in the 60s? There wasn't a movie.
Early 70s. When Adam 12. What we really need we need to follow the rule of law. We need to de-escalate rather than escalate. Netanyahu has been an escalator for decades, and Trump is palling around with Netanyahu. And really the question becomes, why is the United States so dedicated to the modern state of Israel? I mean, I get the biblical Israel understanding, but the biblical Israel of understanding is all 12 tribes, by the way, not just Judah or Jews. It's everybody. But we seem to act like, hey, Netanyahu, the current state of Israel, is the biblical Israel, and how dare you not back them 1,000%? Why are we like that, Doctor?
Well, we can go back to the genesis of where I think most of the evangelicals and Christian faith, largely in the United States, was put on a track of deception clear back earlier in the 20th century, 1907, 1909, with the Schofield Bible Reference Guide, which followed the Zionist perspective. And Zionism is basically a secular movement for a Jewish homeland. And Herzl and those guys in the 1890s started this. The Schofield Bible Guide came along early in the 20th century. The Balfour Decree happened in 1917. The Rothschilds got behind it. The League of Nations got behind it. The Palestinian mandate for the British got behind it. The United Nations took up the banner. And ever since then, there has been a strong and unequivocal movement that, and here's the deal. There are a lot of, there's probably 3 or 4 dozen, I haven't counted them, but 3 or 4 dozen Old Testament scriptures that talk about God's love for Israel. Now, anybody that has the smallest semblance of understanding about, what in the scriptures should be able to understand that, there was Abraham, and then there was Isaac, his son, and then there's Jacob, his son, and he had 12 sons. So 12 tribes came from Jacob. Jacob later got his name changed to Israel. So it's the 12 tribes of Israel. These 12 sons, they're his descendants. There are 12 sons. I mean, there's Dan, and there's Reuben, and there's Joseph. I mean, you can run through the names as easy as I can. But the fact is that there has been this movement for 135 years that this humanist secular organization, they're going to have their own country. And by golly, they have been the aggressors ever since. And it sounds like we've got to take another break, and I better shut up.
You're watching Liberty Roundtable Live.
Are you ready to stand up for your community and support your local sheriff? Join the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association and become a vital member of the Sheriff's Citizens Posse. At cspoa.org, we empower citizens like you through weekly webinars, arming you with the knowledge to back your constitutional county sheriff. Together, we can uphold our Constitution and ensure liberty and justice for all. Your community needs you now more than ever.
This is a battle between truth and deceit. A battle between forces that would enslave this country in darkness and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in fact.
TheEpochTimes.com.
You know where the solution can be found, Mr. President? In churches, in wedding chapels, in maternity wards across the country and around the world. More babies will mean forward-looking adults, the sort we need to tackle long-term, large-scale problems. American babies in particular are likely going to be wealthier, better educated, and more conservation-minded than children raised in still industrializing countries. As economist Tyler Cowen recently wrote, quote, "By having more children, you're making your nation more populous, thus boosting its capacity to solve climate change. The planet does not need for us to think globally and act locally so much as it needs us to think family and act personally. The solution to so many of our problems, at all times and in all places, is to fall in love, get married, and have some kids."
You know, we're kind of mixing domestic and foreign discussions right now. We talked about the Russian oil tanker. We talked about the ongoing Venezuela saga. We've talked about Iran a little bit. We talked about Russia. Then we're talking about the ICE shooting in Minnesota. We're talking about the LDS shooting in Salt Lake City. I know it sounds like we're all over the map, but I see a link between these two. Netanyahu and Trump agree to further military action against Iran. I mean, look, we're involved everywhere. And everywhere it seems like out of control escalation. Why is the United States so dedicated to Israel and Netanyahu? I don't know. I don't agree with it. I know that they basically jumped behind it forever. Now it's hard to disassemble. People are starting to wake up to that con game. All right. Trump says, hey, the U.S. will strike drug cartels in Mexico. Okay, now we're opening up the discussion in Mexico. Cuba, Venezuela. I mean, how many nations can we literally flex our, quote, muscle in and not have such serious blowback and or war end up happening? It's crazy. Well, speaking of domestic and protests, we're talking about protests in Iran. And if anything goes wrong in Iran, hey, we're going to take them on, shoot them, stop them. Got to take care of the Iranians. But you know what? What about protests? in our own country. See, in the Constitution, the First Amendment, you have the right to peacefully assemble. You don't have the right to protest at all, folks. You say, well, Sam, you're just playing semantics. It's the same thing. No, it's not. Let me give you a quick example to make the point. We went to a church Friday night, and we had a private event. The public was invited. Why was it a private event then? Because everybody was invited to it, but it was on private property, a church. And we peacefully assembled. We had security there. We had safety. We had people express their views and opinions and speakers, and everybody clapped, and we had a great time. That's a peaceful assembly. But when you get on the streets and intimidate people, when you get on the streets and yell and scream and get in people's faces, when you block sidewalks, when people walking down the sidewalk feel intimidated, you're not peacefully assembling anymore. You're into a protest, and not very far behind, a very thin line, is a riot. So we went and talked to the protesters. We had about 400 plus people, 350 plus people in our event. It was a great event, a great closed door, small, event to promote constitutional sheriffs and to stop the violation of sheriff's office in the state of Washington. They want to destroy the office of sheriff. The state does. There's bills in the hopper to get that done. And the sheriff that we were there to support, Mr. Swank, Sheriff Swank, basically explained what was happening, okay? And we stand against it. Well, anyway, outside was a protest. When I was there was only a few people there, but eventually the protest swelled to be about 100 people. What happened was the mainstream press promoted the protest pretty much even above our peaceful assembly. It was shocking. But I went and talked to the protesters. Here's what happened.
People coming to leave us alone. You have illegal people. Leave us alone. Don't get violent with me. Don't you talk to me ever. Don't you get violent. I want to listen to what you guys have to say. I come over here pleasant to come pleasant. Don't you get violent. That's the problem. That's why we come to violence. I want to listen to what you guys have to say. Will you tell me?
There's no reason to stand in front of a vehicle and shoot a woman who's just trying to leave.
The sheriffs up here aren't up here.
I understand. I'm listening. Go ahead. Continue.
She was murdered.
Okay.
And the person who murdered her ran off. But yet, this administration is protecting the murderers.
So you're protesting right now the Trump administration?
I'm protesting anyone who supports the Trump administration.
Okay.
I'm not protesting anything. I'm standing up for the belief that
You're standing up for what?
I'm standing up for the belief that it's wrong. Are police allowed to use deadly force just because they wish to? Are they?
I would say no, of course not.
Okay, so then why, regardless of the situation, why was a woman shot and why was our sheriff responding that that was okay? This is his quote. It's on my sign right here. Even if you're right, do you want to be dead right? Do you think that that's acceptable?
I do not want to be dead right. Absolutely not.
I like how you're avoiding answering that question.
I'm not. Ask the question again.
No, I don't need to repeat myself.
You want to be dead right? And I said no.
No, I said here is a quote.
Okay.
And I asked you what you felt about that quote.
Okay, say it one more time. I'm sorry.
No, I'm not here for you.
It says, even if you are right, do you want to be dead right?
And I say no.
Anyway, they're being a silent protest right now. So
that's okay. I'm just answering and saying no, I would not want to be dead right. No, certainly not. And do I believe in murder? Absolutely not.
Then let us assemble here.
I have no problem if you want to assemble here.
Okay, so then why are you asking us questions? If you know why we're here.
No, I don't know why you're here. That's why I asked.
You just
nice with courtesy. He's just being courteous.
And I've answered.
Yeah, but that's all while he's doing this. That's courtesy.
So I was listening to what you had to say.
Help the blind man to see.
I don't believe in murder. And I don't have any problem with you protesting here. I just wanted to learn what you guys had to say. I was just willing to listen. That's all.
Thank you for listening. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. At the end, I walked away thinking, they gave me the silent treatment. They finally refused to talk to me. But, I wanted to say, you have the right to remain silent, and it will not be used against you. Anyway, there you have it. Real street analysis, Doctor.
Well, as I said earlier, I believe that this whole issue could be a hinge point that flips some of the things in the nation. Some of the MAGA movement, when you talk about issues that there's a divergence from the Trump ego, if you will. See, I wish there were time for me to read to you St. George Tucker's comments about how personal umbrage is taken by a monarch that leads to violence and destruction of freedom. And I'm afraid, like, for example, when Trump had a whole bunch of oil executives come in and they had a big deal about how many of you guys are going to be able to invest in Venezuela. And Exxon's executive said, I don't think Venezuela is investable right now. I think that's an accurate statement. I mean, they had all of their investments seized previously, and it's just really not stable and hopeful enough to even say, hey, I'm going to put $1 billion in there.
And history proves that America will abandon you if they see the need.
And right. And so Trump says, oh, we don't want Exxon involved in this. Well, I think the Exxon executive was using a pragmatic view on something, but Trump took umbrage at it. He does when anybody pushes back on anything he does, whether it's supporting Israel or whether it's bombing Nigeria or whether it's seizing the oil in Venezuela. And somebody says, hey, wait, there's a process here. We are not an empire. We don't go seize. Tojo was doing that. Hitler was doing that. I mean, Caesar did that. Nebuchadnezzar did that. And people say, well, we are an empire. Well, maybe we ought to rethink that a little bit.
We ought to rethink that. We ought to stop that. Ron Paul just wrote a column. It says regime change and nation building are back. So if that doesn't spell it out, I don't know what does. The problem is we're getting more and more protests in America. The protesters are half right, when they say, hey, some of these people are murdered. Do you support murder? I say no. Do you think that's acceptable? No, I don't. Okay, I tried to answer the question the best I could. I tried to really answer the question and be honest. I don't agree with the protesters. I don't agree with the way they're going about it necessarily because they're intimidating folks on the streets that are innocent and have nothing to do with it. I have a problem with that. That's not a peaceful assembly when people feel intimidated. Nevertheless, at the end of the day, the protesters are starting to have some valid claims. And pretty soon, who agrees with whom? Don't know. But the last topic I want to really highlight quickly, the shift of conservatives in favor of the Affordable Care Act subsidies. This is disaster, Doctor. When they couldn't do anything, they voted 40 times against it. When they had the chance before, they failed. Now they're literally actively promoting it. The House just passed the return of the Affordable Care Act, if you will, right?
Yeah, well, if you go back to the Alexander Pope statement about wickedness and evil, and it first endure, then pity, then embrace. And what has happened is that all of these, oh my goodness, ain't it awful, we're going to have the Affordable Care Act subsidies go away the end of the year, which it did. But everybody, not everybody, but virtually everybody now, conservative, quote unquote, and liberal, quote unquote, across the board is saying, well, healthcare is something we've got to do it better. And there's a lot of different programs, or medical savings plans, single payer, all sorts of subsidies. The point of the matter is the only reason that healthcare and insurance is out of control is because of government intervention. And government intervention, you get more and more of the bad stuff the more you have government involved in this kind of stuff.
And Republicans and Democrats equally involved. That's right.
And Mitt Romney was the guy that foisted this on the American. He claims to be a Republican, but Massachusetts never, to my knowledge, in the recent last 200 years, 150, has ever elected somebody that had baseline principles that were correct. And so what if Mitt Romney, a Republican, started it? It kept it going until Obama could get his through and the Supreme Court screwed up with their ruling. And now a lot of conservative representatives are saying, my people back home need help with their health care, so government's going to provide it. It's all wrong. There's not a single sound principle involved in it.
The best help you can do is let the church get involved, let private sectors compete where supply and demand, and the best man wins, the better mousetrap to your door, get government out of it. That's the only way to really find our way back to solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, the supreme law of the land is there even during emergency times. For Dr. Scott Bradley, freedomsrisingsun.com, we are syndicated by Loving Liberty Networks, lovingliberty.net. God save the Republic of the United States of America.